I mean, it's the obvious question. First of all, it's this terrible state there, but this pandemic having its second grip on India, how's it affecting your business?
Yes, good morning. Yeah, the second wave is it actually engulfed the whole country and swept through, towns, cities, villages, and big metros. And obviously, it has affected domestic business rather strongly. About 70% of our dealerships are closed, and the balance 30% are operating in very, very restricted hours. And that has a proportional effect, obviously, on demand and sales.
Now, when we look at not just, of course, you as an entity, but we have to talk about the supply chain there as well. And what are you sensing from that?
Well, in this second round, so to say, the supply chain has not got impacted so strongly as demand, But obviously, we can't manufacture if there is no demand. Because last time on, the supply chain had suffered a lot because migration had been triggered. So transport systems, labor, etc., had got impacted. But now, with full care, we are managing to keep the supply chain moving and servicing demand. In our particular case, almost half, and now, of course, almost 3/4 of our demand comes from overseas markets, which are not as badly impacted as India. And for that, the supply chain is moving. There is a lot of management effort which is required. But this time around, at the local level, the dialogue between the administration and the companies is far better. And there's a lot of accommodation, and people have learned, and there are, plan Bs and plan Cs in the which have been made, and that is with a lot of effort helping us keep the supply chain going, particularly to service our overseas markets.
How about the impact from the chip shortage? Rakesh, we heard from Whirlpool earlier saying that, the chip shortage could go beyond the fourth quarter.
Yes, that has been for quite some time now affecting us very, very badly. There is a lot of electronics, not as much as in a car, but some of the premium end motorcycles are electric scooter. The visibility on the supply chain side for those components has been very poor, just about a week or so, which means planning is extremely difficult. But our international vendors are telling us that probably we'll have to live with this till at least May or June, after which they'll be able to give us a better planning horizon and availability horizon. But for the moment, yes, the premium end of motorcycles is definitely very badly affected for production.
I can only imagine that the surge in commodity prices like steel, copper is also impacting your business. What are you feeling? What are you seeing in terms of your margins?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's a double whammy of sorts in the demand getting restricted and commodity prices going up. We are seeing about 3 to 4% impact on the cost side. We have taken some pricing action, but not entirely. I would say about 1.5% has already been taken in. But the costs come in one slug, and the pricing, we are going to be very calibrated about it because, as you can understand, the demand environment is fragile, and we want to see how demand responds, recovers, and also watch competition. So it's going to be not entirely possible to take cover the cost increases to price increases. However, there are a couple of things, at least from our side, which we are hoping will mitigate this. One is that for the last 1 year, 18 months, we have been focusing very strongly on the premium end of the business, which is, let's say, the top half of the portfolio, 125cc and above, where obviously the margins are better. We are hoping that the export demand, which is returns us a better margin, and with the rupee slightly softer, that should help. And finally, there are some pending incentives, I would say, with the government had confirmed but has to announce. And if all these things sort of roll in, we're hoping that we'll be able to mitigate the cost increase.
Rakesh, talk to us about your EV strategy. I mean, you had initially had a target of 24 cities by the end of the year. Is that still intact? Are you doing things differently?
Well, we actually launched our electric scooter in January last year. And very quickly after that, COVID broke out in China, and our component supply, which was actually sourced out of Wuhan, got impaired. And we had to close down bookings because we had such a splendid response to our e-scooter, Chetak. And in some measure also because Chetak is actually quite an iconic brand. Of course, it comes from a previous era, but it's an iconic brand nevertheless, with a lot of good recall, and partly explained by that. There was a huge demand, so we don't want to sort of disappoint customers. We stopped it, and for almost a year, we were not accepting bookings. We again opened the bookings in April, and in 48 hours again, in fact, our site crashed, but in 48 hours, we had to again stop the bookings because we've got enough bookings. But like I was explaining earlier, we still don't have a good visibility on the some of the electronic components, and we don't want to disappoint our customers. But hopefully by June, it should be clear. We'll reopen the bookings, and we should be back on track to hit at least 24 cities by the end of this fiscal for us.
So, you know, with the pandemic, we have seen a lot of evidence that India's inequalities in terms of, should I say, poverty have grown wider, and we've got a shrinking middle class here as well. Does that change in any way how you sell your products?
Well, you know, I don't know what the middle class is now, but the broad point, the fundamental point which you make is correct. I definitely see a dichotomy here. Actually, the top half of the demand pyramid for our products seems to be doing rather well because, you know, people have not lost their jobs, incomes have not been impaired, and there is a sense of security and a bit of well-being. Stock markets have done well. And demand has, you know, actually done very well in the top half. We used to actually be only about 40% of our business used to come from products in the top half of our portfolio. Now it's shifted to about 60%. And if you look at absolutely the pinnacle of the demand pyramid, the really expensive bikes, the sports bikes, adventure bikes, they're doing rather well. And over this pinnacle sits the four-wheeler, of course, and you all know that there is quite a waiting list for four-wheelers. But in the bottom half of the demand pyramid, the story is very, very different. It seems to have sort of fallen out, and you know, demand has really shrunk, I guess, because fundamentally that segment of people has got very, very badly affected.